The ground shouldn't move. That was the first thought that flashed through my neural pathways as I felt the subtle vibration beneath my hooves. In all my 38 cycles around our star, I had never once experienced the ground, the solid, dependable, stationary ground, doing anything but remaining perfectly still. Yet here it was, moving. I froze in the doorway of my dwelling pod, my 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession as I tried to make sense of what was happening. The trembling intensified. Items on my organization shelf began to wobble, then topple. My precious gem-encrusted memory sculptures, passed down through 7 generations, crashed to the floor and shattered. Outside, the communal alarm began to wail, a sound I had only ever heard during emergency drills, but this was no drill. "Ground shaking!" The cry echoed through the streets of Veltuvia, our capital city. "The prophecy! The world is ending!" A ground shaking? A mythical catastrophe from our ancient texts, so rare that we had no specific term for it beyond the literal description of what was happening. Our planet, blessed with geological stability for thousands of years, simply didn't have earthquakes. Our buildings weren't designed for them. Our people weren't prepared for them. The ground jerked violently and I was thrown against the wall. Through my window I could see the magnificent spires of the Central Knowledge Repository, beginning to sway dangerously. Cracks appeared in the roadway outside my dwelling. A transport vehicle lost control and crashed into a nutrient dispensary, sparking a fire that quickly began to spread. I should move. I should run. I should do something. But my limbs refused to respond to my brain's frantic signals. Terror had effectively paralyzed me, as it had seemingly paralyzed everyone else in view. My neighbors stood frozen in their doorways or huddled in groups, their skin flashing the pale blue of extreme fear, their voices raised in keening wails of despair. "It is the end times," called Veltor, the elder who lived in the dwelling pod across from mine. "The prophecies warned us. The ground shall shake, the sky shall burn, and all civilization shall be reduced to dust." The fire from the damaged dispensary was growing larger now, spreading to adjacent structures. I could hear cries for help from inside the burning building. Someone needed to do something, yet none of us moved. We were a species accustomed to order, to predictability, to control. This chaos had broken something fundamental in our collective psyche. And then I saw them. They emerged from multiple directions, some from the human embassy compound down the street, a structure that had always seemed oddly robust compared to our delicate architectural aesthetic. Others appeared to be tourists, recognizable by their colorful, obvious jewel of the spirit arm attire that our Commerce Guild had designed specifically for visitors. All of them, perhaps 20 humans in total, moving with purpose, seemingly unaffected by the continuing tremors that had our entire population in paralyzed terror. "Fire team, with me!" shouted one who wore the formal insignia of the embassy's security detail, gesturing toward the burning dispensary. "Search and rescue, start checking buildings for trapped civilians. Communications, get on the horn with your contacts in the Valtuvian government and see what resources we can coordinate." The tourists, who only moments ago had been peacefully admiring our towering, sweeping architecture and sampling our famed nectar. "I was a volunteer firefighter back home," called out one, a female wearing a particularly garish sun protection hat. "Point me where you need me." "Former paramedic here," said another, already pulling some kind of compact medical kit from his carrying bag. "Any triage centers being set up?" They moved while the ground still shook. They ran toward the danger, not away from it. I watched in stunned disbelief as 2 humans approached the burning dispensary, covered their mouths with strange masks, and disappeared inside. Moments later, they emerged carrying 3 of my people, including young Zenith, who was clutching her school learning tablet and trembling violently. The other humans were moving through the street, checking buildings, helping those who had been injured by falling debris. One approached me where I still stood frozen in my doorway. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her strange flat face showing what I recognized as concern. When I didn't respond, she gently touched my shoulder. "It's okay to be scared, but I need to know if you're injured." "No," I finally managed. "Why? Why aren't you afraid? The world is ending." The human actually made the sound they call laughter, a response so inappropriate to the situation that I momentarily forgot my fear in pure bewilderment. "It's just an earthquake," she said. "A big one, granted, but not the end of the world. On Earth, some regions get these regularly. My hometown in California gets dozens of small ones every year." "Earthquake?" I tested the unfamiliar word. "Is that what your people call the ground shaking?" "Yes, that's our term for it, from quake, meaning to shake or tremble, and earth, which is what we call the ground." "But the ground is moving," I said, unable to comprehend how she could be so calm about assigning such a simple name to an apocalyptic event. "Yeah, that's what it does sometimes. Look, the shaking is already slowing down. This is probably just the aftershock of the main quake." She was right. The violent tremors had subsided to a gentle vibration, and even that was fading. Down the street I could see the other humans had organized my people into teams. Some were forming a water brigade to fight the fire. Others were helping clear debris. A human was applying medical aid to an injured elder, speaking in soothing tones that seemed to calm the panicked Veltuvian. "How?" I began, stepping cautiously out of my doorway for the first time since the quake began. "Are you doing this? Acting so normal?" The human shrugged, that peculiar shoulder movement they use to indicate casual dismissal. "We've evolved on a planet that's constantly trying to kill us. Earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, volcanic eruptions, blizzards, droughts, wildfires, you name it. Earth throws everything at us. So we adapt." I watched as the humans continued their efficient emergency response. The fire was coming under control. Injured people were being treated. Someone was already organizing a structural assessment team to check building safety. "Nothing bothers humans," I murmured, a phrase I had heard before but never truly understood until now. The human smiled. "Oh, plenty of things bother us. We just don't let it stop us from doing what needs to be done." She gestured toward the activity in the street. "Look around. Your people are joining in now. Sometimes you just need someone to show you it's possible to function even when things get scary." She was right again. Veltuvians were emerging from their fear paralysis, taking cues from the humans, joining the response efforts. The communal alarm had stopped its wailing. The color was returning to people's skin, the pale blue of fear giving way to the normal purple hue. The ground had stopped moving entirely now. The world had not, in fact, ended. "I should help," I said, more to myself than to the human. "That's the spirit," she replied. "There's a team starting to check buildings for structural damage over there. You know the normal state of these structures better than we do. They could use your expertise." As I moved to join my fellow Veltuvians, I looked back at the human, this creature from a world of constant catastrophe who had shown such remarkable calm in the face of what we had believed to be apocalyptic. "Thank you," I said, "for showing us how to face the unthinkable." She nodded. "That's what humans do best. We've spent our entire evolutionary history facing the unthinkable, and then thinking about it anyway, planning for it, adapting to it. To us, an earthquake is just Tuesday." As the day progressed, I found myself working alongside a human tourist. A professor of geology, he had informed me, visiting our world to study our geological formations. The irony that he was an expert in planetary crusts was not lost on me. "Your world has been tectonically inactive for so long that your buildings aren't designed with quakes in mind," he explained as we carefully examined the structural integrity of the community education center. "On Earth, in seismic zones, we build differently. Flexible foundations, reinforced support structures, special materials that can bend without breaking. We never thought we would need such considerations," I admitted, noting a concerning crack in one of the main support pillars. "Our records show the last ground shaking was over 900 cycles ago. Many believed it was just a legend." The professor nodded thoughtfully. "Geological time is deceptive that way. 900 years might seem like forever to us, but to a planet it's barely a blink." He pointed to the igneous and metamorphic rock formations that adorned our city. "These formations suggest your world hasn't always been so stable. I'd wager that millions of years ago this was quite a geologically active place." The concept was difficult to grasp, that our tranquil world had once been as tumultuous as the humans described their Earth to be, that perhaps in some ways our species had forgotten something important by evolving in such stability. As night fell, emergency illumination crystals bathed the city in a soft blue glow. The immediate dangers had been addressed, though much work remained. Remarkably, there had been no fatalities, largely thanks to the quick action of the humans and the eventual participation of my people once we had overcome our initial paralysis. A gathering was forming in the central plaza where the Veltuvian Council of Elders had set up a temporary administration center. I made my way there, curious about what guidance our leaders would offer. Elder Xenox, the head of the council, stood atop a makeshift platform. Beside him stood several humans, including the embassy's senior diplomat and a tourist, who had been identified as having expertise in disaster management. "People of Veltuvia," Xenox began, his voice still trembling slightly, "today we have faced what our ancestors would have called the end shaking. Yet as you can see, the world has not ended." A murmur went through the crowd. Some seemed relieved, others confused, a few almost disappointed that the prophesied apocalypse had failed to materialize. "We have much to learn from our human visitors," Xenox continued, gesturing to those beside him. "While we stood frozen in fear, they acted. While we saw only the end, they saw problems to be solved. And in doing so, they showed us a different way to face catastrophe." The human diplomat stepped forward. "What you experience today is what we call an earthquake, a natural event caused by the movement of rock beneath your planet's surface. They are frightening, yes, but they can be prepared for, and their aftermath can be met." Another human, the tourist with disaster management experience, spoke next. "On our world, we've learned to live with disasters of all kinds. We don't just survive them, we prepare, we respond, we rebuild, and we adapt. We would be honored to share this knowledge with you." Elder Xenox nodded solemnly. "The council has made a decision. We will establish a new division of government, the Department of Environmental Unpredictability, and we humbly request the assistance of humanity in its formation." The announcement was met with an unusual sound. Applause, a human custom that some of our younger citizens had adopted. It seemed strangely appropriate in the moment. As the gathering dispersed, I found myself approached by the human who had first checked on me during the earthquake. "You did good work today," she said, her alien face forming what I now recognized as a smile. Natural helpers are always the first to step up after the initial shock wears off. "I'm not sure I would have done anything if you humans hadn't shown us it was possible," I admitted. "Maybe, maybe not, but you did, and tomorrow you'll do more. That's how it works. Disaster happens, we rebuild. It's a cycle older than civilization itself." I contemplated her words as I looked out over our damaged but enduring city. "I've been thinking about something you said earlier, that nothing bothers humans. But I've been watching all of you today, and I think that's not quite right." She raised one of her eyebrows, a curious human expression. "Oh?" "Everything bothers humans," I said slowly, working out the thought as I spoke it. "You feel fear, pain, grief, anxiety. I could see it in all of you today. The difference is that you don't let those feelings stop you. Perhaps it's not that nothing bothers humans, but rather that nothing paralyzes humans, at least not for long." The human's smile widened. "That's actually a really astute observation. We're absolutely bothered by all sorts of things. We just have this stubborn tendency to keep going anyway." "Is that what you call courage?" I asked. She considered this for a moment. "Sometimes. Other times we call it stubbornness or resilience or even just survival instinct. But whatever you call it, it's kept our species going through ice ages, plagues, wars, and every natural disaster you can imagine." As she spoke, I noticed more of my people joining the rebuilding efforts, working through the night by the light of the emergency crystals. The paralysis that had gripped us was fading, replaced by a new kind of energy. Uncertain but determined. "I think perhaps we Veltuvians have something to learn from humans," I said. "Not just about earthquakes and disaster response, but about facing the unpredictable." "And maybe we have something to learn from you as well," she replied. "Your society has achieved remarkable harmony and advancement without the constant pressure of survival that shaped us. There's value in that stability, too." We worked side by side through the night, human and Veltuvian, each bringing our unique perspectives to the task at hand. By morning, the city was far from restored, but it was functioning. Services were being re-established. People were adapting to the temporary disruptions with increasing resilience, and when the first aftershock hit, a smaller trembling that would once have sent us into panic, I watched with pride as my people responded not with paralysis, but with practiced caution, following the protocols the humans had helped us establish just hours before. Later, as I rested briefly in my partially repaired dwelling, I recorded my thoughts in my personal chronicle. Today, I learned that the universe is more unpredictable than we Veltuvians have allowed ourselves to believe. For millennia, we have built our civilization on the assumption of stability, forgetting that change, sometimes violent change, is the true constant of cosmic existence. I also learned something about our human neighbors in the galaxy. They come from a world that never allowed them the luxury of such assumptions. Their planet has shaped them into creatures of remarkable adaptability and resilience. What we see as the end of everything, they see as Tuesday. Perhaps the most important lesson is this: nothing completely paralyzes humans, not because they don't feel fear, but because they've learned to function despite it, and now they are teaching us to do the same. The ground shaking, the earthquake, as humans call it, has damaged our city, but I believe it has strengthened our people, and in the strange alchemy of disaster and response, it has forged a deeper understanding between our species. Life continues if we have the courage to continue living it. As I finished my recording, I looked out my window at the sunrise, illuminating the damaged but enduring spires of Veltuvia. In the streets below, humans and Veltuvians worked together to restore what had been broken. The world had not ended. It had merely reminded us of its power to change, and we in turn had discovered our power to adapt to that change. A lesson the humans had carried with them across the stars, a gift more valuable than any technology or resource they could have shared. Nothing bothers humans enough to stop them completely. And now, perhaps, the same would be true of Veltuvians as well. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave it a like and to subscribe if you'd like to see more. Feel free to comment and share it as well. With all that said, go on and check out the video in the top left. I think you might like it.